The End of the Civil War. The history of the battles and events that destroyed the Confederacy and finished the war between the states. Written by Charles River editors. Narrated by Jim Walsh. Introduction. Americans have long been fascinated by the Civil War, marveling at the size of the battles, the leadership of the generals, and the courage of the soldiers. Since the war's start over 160 years ago, the battles have been subjected to endless debate among historians and the generals themselves. The Civil War was the deadliest conflict in American history, and had the two sides realized it would take 4 years and inflict over 1 million casualties, it might not have been fought. Since it did, however, historians and history buffs alike have been studying and analyzing the biggest battles ever since. By the close of 1864, Abraham Lincoln had been re-elected, the Union Army had taken Nashville from General Hood, and Sherman had concluded his total war slash-and-burn march of destruction to Savannah, Georgia, offering it as a Christmas present to the president. Nevertheless, with everything seemingly falling to pieces, the South still held out hope of some sort of miracle, and Confederate President Jefferson Davis even attempted to send a peace delegation to meet with Lincoln in the early months of 1865. On January 28th, as Union General Ulysses S. Grant was continuing to lay siege to Robert E. Lee's army at Petersburg, Virginia, Davis sent 3 commissioners headed by Vice President Alexander Stephens to initiate informal peace talks with Lincoln. By February 3rd, however, the talks, known as the Hampton Roads Conference, came to a stalemate as Lincoln would accept nothing less than total union, while Davis would only accept Southern independence. Even at that point, the South was clearly on its last legs. General George H. Thomas had destroyed John Bell Hood's Confederate Army at the battles of Nashville and Franklin, leaving only 2 large Confederate armies still in the field. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was weakened by desertion, lack of supplies, and casualties. And Joseph E. Johnston's army could barely resist against Sherman's army as it was advancing north toward Virginia. From 1863 to 1865, Confederate leaders had even debated whether to conscript slaves and enlist them as soldiers. Even as their fortunes looked bleak, the Confederates refused to issue an official policy to enlist blacks. It was likely too late to save the Confederacy anyway. On April 1st, the Union Army finally broke the Confederate Army's siege lines around Petersburg at the Battle of Five Forks. When fighting across the siege lines erupted the next day, it forced Lee to make a disorderly retreat of both Petersburg and nearby Richmond. Left no choice with Lee's retreat, the Confederate government hurriedly evacuated Richmond, taking as many papers as they could, and Davis moved his headquarters to Danville, Virginia.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?